big day, cam swap day. Let me show you what we got going on here. So the Humvee with the LSx 6 liter, we are putting in a Texas Speed and Performance Stage 3 truck cam. So I'm going to show you how to install a cam in an LS motor. I've done it before. I've got a few. You can see them there. I got one up there. Ooh, up there. I think that is a LSA. Yeah, LSA cam. This is the factory LY6 cam. It's the single bolt, but we switched everything over to this 3 bolt. Not that side. Right in there, you can see the 3 bolts. Kinda. 1, 2, 3. What does it say on this side? Ooh-wee. Look at that. TSP camshaft, Tech Speed and Performance. So first thing we have to do is drain the oil and drain the coolant. Now I've already drained the coolant via the petcock at the bottom into a 5-gallon bucket. Now I'm going to use the airlift tool to make sure we get 100% out of it. Now I showed this in the last video I did when I actually filled the system with coolant. So if you want to see how this works, go watch that video. I'm just going to go ahead and do it because I want to get this cam swap done. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out and I'll be back in a minute. So as you can see, based on the vacuum gauge, we have no leaks and we have no fluid left in the system, because if we did, it would have come out of this tube, drained down and into my Prestone Dexcool container. So we're good to go on the coolant. Now I just got to drain the oil. I'm actually going to let that sit there like that while I drain the oil, just to make sure we don't have any leaks. Even if they're small, it will show on the gauge. So next steps, honestly, and as you can tell, it's so freaking hot. Next step's just draining the oil into a 5-gallon bucket. Nothing crazy there, won't video it. If you've never done that, probably not gonna wanna do a cam swap by yourself, but I'll get to you after that step. All right, so the coolant is drained completely, checked with a vacuum, no extra coolant in the engine, so when I pull the water pump off, there shouldn't be too much that comes out of there. The oil's drained out of the engine, so don't have to worry about that. The next steps are, I need to take the coil packs off, I need to take the valve covers off, I need to take the water pump off, and I need to take the front engine cover, or the cam sprocket, cam gear cover off. And once all that's off, I can start to I've got wooden dowel rods that go into the block to keep the lifters from falling down into the motor, which is awesome. And then I put those dowels in, I can pull the cam out, put the new cam in, and then button it all up. Now I just made it sound really, really easy, but I'm gonna go through step by step how to do it. So the first thing, coil packs, valve covers need to come off so we can get the rocker arms off. All right, so I've unbolted the coil packs, I've taken off the spark plugs at the coil pack, and now this just comes off as one unit. Make sure to label them. Please make sure they don't get damaged. Bring your spark plug wires out of the way of the valve cover as much as possible. And now we're going to take the valve cover off. It's amazing how dirty this thing has gotten just in a little bit of time that I've run it. So I'm going to take it off, probably clean it up a good bit. We'll move on to the next thing. Of course, it'd give me trouble. Now this already has the Chevrolet Performance springs in it. You can see those blue beehive springs. So it's ready for, let me get it on this angle here. It's ready for the Texas Speed cam. That's why I couldn't go over 550 lift. They make a 600 lift, but you have to upgrade the springs even further. So now, the next step is to take off this entire assembly of rockers using these bolts right here. And you're gonna have to look and see, like this one has tension on it. We're gonna have to do that one. I believe we do that one last. I'm gonna have to look. I can't really remember 100%, and I'll admit that. So I know that one, I think we loosen up all these and then we rotate the motor or something, but I'll check and let you know. So I was right. You can see there are, let's see, this one down here and this one right here have spring load on them. And so you're gonna do all the springs that do not have spring load, meaning they're not compressed, then rotate the crank until the spring load comes off of them, the ones that have it currently, and then you can undo those. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and we'll see how it turns out. All right, so I have gone through and loosened every single rocker. Now at this point, you could take the entire assembly off. You can lift up the rockers off of the push rods without a problem. But for what we're doing, I've already changed the spring, so I'm gonna leave it just like this. And I'll explain why in the next step, because I'm about to go over to the driver's side and do exactly what I did here over there. But when you change the springs, yeah, you got to take all this stuff off. It comes off as one big assembly. You want to make sure you mark where they came from so you can put them back exactly how they were. But when you do just a cam swap, if you've already done springs or you don't plan on doing springs, which I would recommend you do springs, you can leave it like this, because when I rotate the motor, I'm going to see if I can get the rocker, not the rockers, the oh, what are they called? I forget. They're down in there. The push rods, push them or whatever. But I'm gonna rotate the motor, get those pushed up into the sleeves, and then put the dowel rods. So as long as the dowel rods go down in there, and I'm not risking one falling down into the motor, I'm gonna leave it just like this so I don't have to go through the step of pulling all that out. But if I can't get the dowel rods in, then I'll have to come back and remove this entire assembly, pull the push rods out, rotate the motor, etc. But we'll be doing that together, so don't worry. Now, I'm just gonna do this to the other side, and then we'll move on to the front of the motor. As you can see, the driver's side is done. I've got everything just like the passenger side. So now, I'm gonna come over and time to take off the water pump. So on an LS motor, it's really, really easy. I've already done undone the top radiator hose right there. You undo the bottom radiator hose, the two heater hoses, and then there are 6 10mm bolts. You can see one right there. 6 10mm bolts. You undo those, the whole water pump's going to come off. There's going to be 2 gaskets behind it, one on the passenger side, one on the driver's side. I recommend AutoZone or wherever, go get new gaskets. It's not worth the pain of having to tear the entire thing back down again. I think you can get an entire package of gaskets for this motor for like 50 bucks or 60 bucks. So just plan on that when you do it. So I'm going to go ahead and undo the water pump, pull the water pump off, and then we'll get to doing the crank pulley, which you do have to have a special tool you can buy from Summit. And then we're going to do the engine cover, the front engine cover, and that will reveal the next step, which is the cam itself. The water pump is off, as you can see on the left and right sides of that cover. I've got some paper towels shoved in there because I made quite a bit of a mess. Now I got to get that pulley, the crank pulley, off, because that cover, that silver cover right there, has to come off because the cam is right behind it. And one neat thing about the Humvee, other than the fact that I can get to the back of the engine from inside the cab, is without the mechanical fan there, I have all that room for the cam to come out. So I shouldn't have an issue pulling the cam out, putting the new cam in. Shouldn't have to pull out the radiator or anything like that. If you are running the mechanical fan on a Humvee LS swap, for some reason, if there is another one out there, you will have to take that mechanical fan off, which again, you'd have to do that to take the water pump off anyway. So I've got a special tool. Let me show it to you. It's Summit Racing brand, I believe. Let me go to my toolbox here. And it is the LS damper install tool. Comes in this nice little box, but that is it. So that installs, and the removal process is done in a similar fashion with this tool. This is called the LS Harmonic Balancer Pulley Kit, and it has the correct teeth on the puller to get the LS damper off. So I'm going to use this to pull it off, this other tool from Summit to install it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I got it out. So that's the dampener bolt. The crank pulley bolt has some adhesive, or not adhesive, but some tack back here to keep it from coming loose. The bolt is huge. It's 15 16ths. It's so freaking hot, my brain isn't working. So that's out, and you think, well, how'd you get that out? Did you use an impact? I did. That's a normal impact. This is the impact you got to use to get it out. So unless you have a special tool that locks the flex plate, you bolt it in where the starter goes and it locks the flex plate so you can pull that out. If you don't have that, you will need a huge impact. If you don't have a huge impact, or it won't fit, like that barely fit in there, you're gonna have to have somebody hold the pulley with a strap wrench, and then use a really big breaker bar to get this thing out. That's gonna be the biggest pain the entire time. Now what I'm gonna do this time is replace this bolt. This is about $4, $5. I'm gonna replace this bolt with an ARP, because when this goes back in, you torque the old bolt in, then you take it back out, put the new bolt in, torque it, and then do 140 degrees, and it's a one-time use bolt. So an ARP is torque to yield, but it's multiple use bolt. Now it is $30, but it's well worth it not to have to keep buying these stupid things. So got the bolt out. Now I'm going to use that puller right here to pull the pulley off of the motor. Whew, I am whooped right now. It's got to be 125, 150 degrees in here. Whew, all right, here we go. All right, so I'm gonna set the camera up for a second. Show you. I got the pulley off. Looks like it's in good shape. No nicks, no bruises. The reason you want to use an LS style puller is because when the teeth go in, you can see they have that notch, that tooth, and it fits right on there. So every size of the puller has a tooth that locks in to every part of that dampener. And if you try to use like one of the AutoZone universal pullers, it just breaks. It either breaks this or it breaks your puller. So spend the money, get you a nice LS puller, and you'll use it, I promise. Because once you put one cam in, you want to go to a different cam, and then maybe a bigger cam or a smaller cam, or you'll get a different motor and put a big cam in it. So that's it. Next, let me show you. The motor's pretty far apart. So I've got everything off. Now I just have to pull that cover off. There are 2 bolts from the bottom going through the oil pan, and then the rest are just on the perimeter. Make sure to unhook that little electrical connection right there, and then you can pull the cover off, which I'm about to do right now. So it is in, or out, I guess you should say, the cover. Notice I put the crank bolt back, and I've just loosened 2 of the cam bolts. I've taken the 3rd one out, but I've loosened those. because before we remove the sprocket, we need to get the entire assembly to top dead center. And now the sprocket has somewhere, I can't see right now, but it has a little dimple that tells you where top dead center is. And the pulley from down here and the pulley from right here, or not pulley, but sprocket on both directions, the two dimples or indentions will line up, letting you know that it's top dead center. Honestly, there's probably another video that shows it better, but I'm crammed under here, so that's as good as it gets. So I'm gonna find TDC, and then I'm gonna undo these bolts completely, pull this off, let the chain just rest, and then I can pull the cam out, put the new cam in. Oh, you're not even looking at what I'm pointing at. Pull this out, let the chain rest, pull, actually, before I pull the cam out, I've got to rotate it 360 degrees. That's going to get the lifters up into their pockets so they don't fall down, and then I'm going to use a wood dowel to hold those while I swap the cams, and then I'll pull the dowel out and let the lifters sit back on the cams again. Sounds confusing, it's really not. I'll show you as I go, but right now I've got to get this to TDC. So I've put this bolt back in and I'm gonna get it there, and then we'll continue. Okay, so it's a new day. As you can see, I already took out the sprocket for the cam or the chain. I've got it right up here. Let me zoom out. One thing I'll show you is right down here at the bottom, that little tab that you see right there. That's how you tell TDC. So this should be pointing straight down to the ground, and then the crank will be pointing straight up. But if you have this to the bottom, you're fine, and it has a little dowel pin you see right there. Then make sure you put the cam in right, and I'll kind of show you how to reset that back in. For now, what I need to do is take off the retainer plate, which takes a T40 Torx. It's, let's see, these bolts, there's 4 of them. And then I always replace that cam retainer plate because there's a gasket on the back of it, and sometimes that gasket will stick to the block, and I don't want to risk having to take this entire thing back apart. You can also see the chain is rested right there. When I get it all put back together, I'm going to set the cam where it needs to be, and then come back and put the chain on and stuff, but I'll show you how that works. So let me take off the cam retainer plate, and then I'll show you how to roll the cam, get the lifters up in the trays, and then put dowel rods in there so we can take the cam out. Alright, so I'm at the point where I can rotate the cam around, and what this is doing is rotating the cam in order to get the lift, or rotating the cam to get the lifters up in the tray, so when I pull the cam out, the lifters don't fall down in the motor, which would be really bad because I'd have to take the exhaust off, the heads off, the intake manifold off. I'd pretty much have to take the whole motor apart except the bottom end. So I thought I would be able to do it while keeping these on, the rockers and the push rods and things, but as you can see, as I rotate it, they just fall right back down. So I am indeed going to have to take the rockers out, which is not a big deal. I've already unbolted them, and then take each push rod out and slide the dowel rod in right here so it holds the lifters from falling, which is not a big deal. Takes a few extra minutes. It's way quicker than having to take the whole top end of the motor off because I've dropped a lifter in. Alright, so as you can see, I got both dowels in. I did have to sand them down just a little bit, so I would recommend, if you're going to go the wooden dowel way, get a little bit, whatever one size smaller than 5/16, because they were a little too thick. This one on the driver's side is fine. It's this one's a little tight, so don't know why the variable. But as you can see, I've got a screwdriver stuck into the cam, and I'm going to go to pull it out. If you hear something fall into the motor, video's over, and I'm going home forever. Well, let me get it started. All right, so take 3. I marked the dowels, pulled them out, checked them against the other camshaft to make sure they were long enough, or enough was in. And then now we've got a longer M8 bolt that will give me a little bit more leverage. Oh, there we go. And so we just make sure not to mess up the bearings or break the dowels. And that cam coming out of here is an LS9 variant. and is great for top end RPM and blower motors, and not at all good for our application. So the cam is out, time to put the new one in. All right, so now I've got the new Texas Speed and Performance Stage 3 truck cam. Now with any new cam, there's 2 steps before you put it in the truck. First one's going to be to clean it really good with brake cleaner or carb cleaner, something to get any kind of oil off of it, residue off of it, things like that. So I'm just going to go over it real good, every lobe, make sure it's clean. Then I'll go back with a rag and do the same thing, but I just want to do this. And then once we're done with this, got a hole in my glove, we're going to coat it with oil and give it that coat of oil before we put it in, so when we do the first startup, it is ready to go. So now let me grab a rag, I'll go over it one more time, and then we can do the oil, cover it in oil, then we'll put it in the motor. All right, so now just coat it up real good. Get your cloth, wipe it down, make sure there's no grease or anything on it yet. We're gonna get all this off to, oh yeah, that's nice. Put the oil on it. The oil will be a little bit of a messy job, but it's good for that first startup. All right, and for the oil, I'm using like a really heavy duty diesel oil, and all I want to do is put it on every lobe. Kind of rotate it around, just get it nice and oiled up. And there you go. So I'm going to stick it on there for right now. Go clean up and get ready to put it in. All right, time to put the new cam in, just like it came out. Just be real careful with it. And again, you don't want to break the dowels, so I've already oiled it up, nice and easy. And if you need to get a reset on your hand, just on the primary lobes, you have that opportunity. Ooh. You just want to try not to nick anything or put any gashes in it, which I would imagine would be pretty difficult, but you never know. Come on, get in there. There we go. The cam is in. Spin it around a few times, make sure it spins freely, and then I can get this bolt out of here. All right, so now I'm going to take the wooden dowels out, reassemble the front of the motor, and show you how to index the cam sprocket so you go back TDC, top dead center. All right, so the cam cover is on. Now I'm going to show you how to get it to top dead center. You'll see that the cam has a dowel pin right here. I do know that when I took it out, it was kind of in that position. But what we're going to want to do is put the sprocket on without the chain, and get this pointing straight down, and then we can get, that means the cam is in the right place, and then we can put the chain on it and put it right back. But to do this, you will need one cam bolt. Let me see if I can. I gotta kind of pull it out a little bit. Ooh. About like that. And then find your dowel pin. You get the dowel pin in there, and you should be able to get a single bolt. Put it in. Just snug, don't have to be tight. And then now I can search or try to find TDC loosely. So it is about right there. That's where I took it off at. And now I can take the sprocket back off and put the chain on it and just stick the sprocket right back on, and I know the cam is at TDC. So that's a neat little trick. I'll be damned if it didn't work. Alright, so now the sprocket is back on. It is top dead center. And you have to torque the 3 cam bolts to 26 foot-pounds. Alright, so I have the cam bolts tightened, the sprocket put on correctly. It was at TDC when it was all put together and tightened, but I had to remove the bolt, so it moved around. Next thing, I've cleaned off this surface and ready for the cover and the gasket. And in order to do the cover and the gasket, you put the cover on, you get the bolts finger tight, and then you put the crank pulley on with the crank pulley installer. You put the bolt in, you tighten it down to 235 foot-pounds. Once this is tightened and the pulley has centered the cover, then you go back and you torque and tighten all the bolts for the cover. So the pulley has to go on first, that centers everything, and then you're going to have to tighten the bolts. And you do have to right here in this corner, and then right here in this corner where the oil pan and the block meet, you have to put a little RTV in there so you don't get oil leaks. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cover on, or RTV first, then put the cover on, finger tighten the bolts where it still can move and adjust, then put the crank pulley on, use the crank pulley installer to install it, then put the bolt in, 235 foot-pounds, and then go back and tighten all the bolts for the cover. Alright, so the crank pulley is on, the front cover's on, front cover bolts are 18 foot-pounds. When I said earlier that the crank pulley bolt was 235 pounds, that's because I'm using an Earl's aftermarket crank bolt that can be torqued. The factory bolt is, I think you go like 250 pounds on the old bolt, back it all the way out, put the new bolt in, and then go like 50 pounds and then 140 degrees, and there's just a bunch of crap that I didn't want to deal with. So this bolt that you buy, you can either buy it from ARP or Earl's. It's $35 for a bolt, so it is expensive, but when you don't have a lot of room to play with, torquing to just 235 pounds and being done with it is much easier than trying to go 140 degrees. So go 235 degrees if you have the Earl's or ARP bolt, but if you don't, you have to go factory service manual, and there are a ton of videos online on what that is. So next I need to install the water pump, hook up all the coolant lines, and then I'll be done with the front of the motor. I can move on to putting the rockers, push rods, all that stuff back in, and then we will be done with the cam swap. Alright, so here's the deal. It's completely back together. Things escalated quickly, and I forgot to video a lot of it. So the cam is in, The motor is completely put back together. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't going home until it was done. So everything, sorry about the glare, everything's done. I will go over in another video whatever I missed on this one. The best video for this is if you search on YouTube for LS cam swap. There's one by Comp Cams. Best video hands down on how to do a cam swap on an LS motor. You can Google all the torque specs. I'm excited to get this thing cranked up. I do have to put oil back in it. I do have to put transmission fluid in it. And we will let the system, the Holley system, learn the new cam, and we'll see how it runs. Thanks for watching, guys. Please make sure to subscribe so I can continue to bring y'all videos and hopefully get this monster running on direct port injection and some other goodies. So have a good night, everybody.